Tonight on Another Thing About Tartan, I am so pleased to welcome Jamie McGeechan, award-winning singer-songwriter and musician originally from Scotland and now living in St Louis in Missouri. So given that Jamie was nominated for Scottish Album of the Year in 2020, I must be the worst person to be doing this interview as I'm completely tone deaf. But having been sung to last Burns Night by the wonderful Jamie McDougall, who presents Classics Unwrapped for BBC Radio Scotland, my hopes are quite high for another song this evening. So Jamie, you're a born and bred Scot, so can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and how you came to be in Missouri?
Oh my goodness, what a there's so much. Well, firstly, it's lovely to be on the show, on the podcast. Very grateful for the chance to yap, and it always feels it just makes me feel like home. You know, getting to talk to other Scots. Always appreciate it. I've been living in St Louis, Missouri for just over 2 years now. I was born in Falkirk, but I've lived in Ayr for most of my life. So I mean, essentially, I'm an Ayr boy at heart, but there's a wee bit of the Bairn in there as well. And basically, I am a musician, and I also do some work in the American Scottish community with the American Scottish Foundation. And there's just such a great community here. So even though I am 4,000 miles away from Ayr, very much feel at home.
Yeah. So, and how did you end up in Missouri then? What's your story? What brought you to cross the Atlantic?
So a couple of years ago, a lovely lassie from St Louis was on holiday in Scotland, and she ended up with more than she bargained for, I'd say. My wife Sarah, she's been living in St Louis for about 6 or 7 years. She's from Iowa originally. So she was on holiday in Scotland, and she just always had an interest in Scotland. From music and culture, films, TV, and I'm glad she went to Scotland rather than somewhere else.
Yeah,
we met, and it turned out I was actually going to be coming over here to play a Burns supper anyway before we'd actually met, so we were quite amazed at that. St Louis is probably far less promoted than most of the other cities in the US. You know, you hear a lot about New York, LA, Chicago, but you don't tend to hear a lot about St Louis, home of Chuck Berry, no less, and Tina Turner lived here for a spell as well. So there's a great kind of music history here, and there's a couple of Scottish groups as well, the St Louis St Andrews Society and the Scottish Arts Partnership, and the Scottish Arms, the Scottish pub, which is brilliant.
So you're right at home then. So apart from the Scottish Arms then, what else do you love about being in Missouri, and what do you then, on the other side, what did you love about Ayr in Scotland?
I'd say I've met so many really decent, good-natured, funny and warm people here. There's a good community spirit to St Louis itself, and Missouri, and what I miss about Scotland is probably yapping away to strangers anywhere, anytime. I mean, I like to yap to anybody on the bus or just in the street, and if you're walking down Ayr High Street, or indeed any high street in Scotland, that's not out of the ordinary, you know. I would say at times here, people can wonder who this guy with the funny accent is trying to yap to them. You know, like, what do you want? Just to yap. So I'd say, people are lovely here, but I'd say it's maybe easier just to yap away to somebody you've never met before when you're walking down Ayr High Street.
Yeah. Well, it's a smaller place too, isn't it? So then, how these experiences you've had at home and then abroad, has that influenced your songwriting then? How's that changed things for you?
Aye, definitely, because I'm very much influenced by whatever's going on in my life or the world at large. There's very little that's abstract about my writing. It's more just a case of very directly writing about my feelings. The album that I recorded before I came here was called Midnight Kingdom, and that was largely based on, events that were happening at the time politically here in the US as well as in Scotland, and my feelings about leaving Scotland to come here. It's been a strange one over the last 2 years because there haven't been many opportunities to get out and perform, so it's been a great time for just sitting writing at home. I felt so strongly for a lot of my friends that live in Scotland that have had performances, postponed over the last 2 years. It's not necessarily been easy for anybody, but when you get such a buzz from performing to people, to only be able to do that online, it's not quite the same. But I mean, this has been such a good time for just reflecting, as well as writing at home. So I've kept busy anyway, but I just can't wait to get back out singing again.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, as you say, that buzz, that's what's lacking. Even that buzz when you weren't allowed in a pub for a while. You just miss that, don't you? As you say, just that chance to meet and chat and, the random things that happen.
Aye, no, we need it. I mean, I thrive on that. I really do. I mean, when I was living in Scotland, every weekend I'd be out playing in pubs, hotels, weddings, parties. So I was always having that experience. So to do without that for a wee bit has been quite weird. But I feel with being here, I'm very much inspired by what's going on. I mean, I feel made welcome, no doubt about that. But every day is a cultural learning experience for me, and hopefully for the people I meet as well, as I tell them a wee bit about Scotland.
Absolutely. And so moving on to Burns, since this is the month of the special man, have you always been a fan of him and his work? And did you like it as a child? Because I always remember loving that opportunity to stand up and recite "I Love to a Mouse" was my favourite. But and that was kind of primary school age. I've probably lost that now. But do you feel the same? How is it for you?
Well, it's been an interesting journey, but I've certainly got a lot to thank Burns for. It was a Burns supper that I came to play at in New York for my first time performing over here for the American Scottish Foundation. So really, Burns plays such a role in my life. Getting to sing his words is an incredible experience. But I would say I've grown into it. When I was at Ayr Grammar Primary School, I had a wonderful head teacher called Mrs. Pettigrew, who her passion for music and Burns and performance was a real motivator for us all. But I'd say the significance was lost on me as a wee boy living in Ayr. The kind of wider significance, the level of passion and interest for Burns around the world. I don't think I really got that as a wee fella in Ayr. No. It's not until I, became a wee bit older that I realised this person has influenced millions and millions and millions of people across the world and continues to do so, despite not having access to Facebook or Twitter or social media. It's just purely on the basis of his work, his insights, his amazing reflections on the everyday, as well as some of the most important things about life: community, love, independence, freedom, liberty. So it was lost on me as a wee fella, but now I couldn't be more grateful that I had the opportunity to grow up somewhere like Ayrshire in Scotland, where his work is celebrated, and rightly so, because there's so much that's good about it.
Again, it's just not dated, has it? Like you said before, all those themes are still so current. It is special. So you recorded the songs of Robert Burns live inside Burns Cottage in Alloway, and you were, I think, the first person ever to do this. Is that correct?
Aye, absolutely.
How did that come about?
Well, it was just I'd been putting on a couple of concerts at the Robert Burns Birthplace Museum just down the road, which is an incredible day out. If you've not been there, I fully urge you to go and check it out. I mean, there's thousands of Burns artefacts, manuscripts, interactive exhibits. So I'd had a wee bit of engagement with the Burns Museum and the National Trust through putting on these concerts, and I had the opportunity to perform at the opening of the Burns Museum as well. So I had a wee bit of a relationship there, and I just wondered, has no one actually ever thought to record inside Burns Cottage? Because I know it's been used for many things in its time, including as an ale house, as a pub. And I bet there was a few stories came of that, drinking in Burns Cottage. Something I'd love to go to one of the actual Burns suppers that they hold in the cottage. As fundraisers for the cottage. I mean, I've not been to one of them, but I'd love to do that. Run by the Friends of Burns, Alley Friends of Burns Club. But I just cheekily asked if I could do it. Can I record inside the cottage, please? And basically, we used it as a kind of split promotional thing for a fundraiser for the cottage, and I got the incredible privilege to record inside it, and the acoustics, the environment, the feel of it just felt like such a privilege. But I just love the fact that there is maybe a wee bit more of Burns in it because it was in his house.
Yeah. Different. So, and most of us won't have been in the cottage, so in Burns Cottage. So, can you give us a little mini journey or a bit of what's the atmosphere like in there? What's it like? I've not been myself either, but I am inspired now. I'm going to have to go.
Aye, it's brilliant. The amount of people that I meet that even live just simply down the road in Ayr that haven't been amazes me, and I think there could be an improved bus service out to Alloway, no doubt about it. But I think the Burns Museum used to run a bus from the town up to it, and certainly there's a bus to Craig Tara that you can jump on and jump off at the cottage. But I think the first thing that strikes me when I go to the grounds is certainly how well the National Trust do a great job in upkeeping the gardens. The gardens are beautiful, the rose gardens at the back. I mean, it's such a stunning thing. I would never have appreciated a rose garden as a wee boy, but now I'm thinking this is just gorgeous, a wee bit longer in the tooth. But the first thing when you walk into the cottage is just to think how stark, for all the love and companionship and everything that he must have grew up, what a kind of stark environment to live in, this stone house with a byre next to it with the animals living inside. I mean, that must have been a rustic experience, to say the least. But it's been recently maintained. The roof was in need a bit of repair, the thatched roof, which National Trust raised money with local people and people all over Scotland and the world donating money. So I think they've done a great job to maintain its kind of original feel, but look after it, which must be a difficult job. But it's probably bigger than you think it is, and there's like an interactive audio experience that you can tune into, you can listen into when you're walking through the cottage that gives you a description on the different rooms. But for me, it's probably the gardens at the back, the rose gardens. They're just the loveliest. And you're about a mile away from the Robert Burns Birthplace Museum, where all the artefacts are held, and again there's an interactive exhibit in there, and a wee shop and a cafe, and it's a great day out.
Wow, on my list then for 2022. So by doing that, and already you've inspired me to go to Burns Cottage. So, is this a way to reach new audiences, the way you're presenting things, and to inspire more interest, more wee laddies, to get them finding out? What do you think about that?
Well, it's an interesting one for me personally, because now I'm here in the US, and I do work with the American Scottish Foundation in New York, and there are there are hundreds of American Scottish organisations, plenty of Canadian Scottish organisations, that passionately care about Scottish culture, and even more so about the bonds of friendship, between North America and Scotland, and how to gently promote Scottish culture to the next generation is really, it's a big kind of thinking point. What's the best way to do that? And certainly I feel a degree of responsibility and opportunity to play a part in that. I do think that's important, no doubt about it. But I was having a good conversation with Alan Beck, the Senior Vice President of the Robert Burns World Federation, just a couple of days ago. And, the Burns Federation, they run a lot of competitions in Scotland for musicians, poets. And I think that's a great way of bringing the youth involved, bringing the youth into it. But as I say, when I was at school, it felt, although my head teacher was so passionate, it felt a bit like rote learning. I didn't really understand the wider context of why it was important. And I do always think there's space for us to interpret and enjoy Burns through a more contemporary lens. It doesn't have to be, sticking to the way we've always done it, the way we sing his songs or anything like that. I think there's always room to look through the contemporary, and I think we need to, ensure that we use the platforms that younger audiences are using as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I would totally agree, and I think we do a lot of that with Tartan as well. We quite like putting a different spin on it, doing different things with it, making some really contemporary designs and things. And as you say, we have a responsibility to pass these things on and to inspire the next generation. I have teenagers, so they're definitely not interested right now. But I'm presuming they'll come back to it, and in years to come, they'll say, "Actually, Mum, you were right."
They will. It just takes them time.
No, it does. So you must have performed at some amazing Burns nights over the years. So have you got any favourites? Anything? Any good stories to share with us?
Oh, it's the one of the brilliant things about it is I feel at home no matter where it is, which is great. Like, it could feel like just being back home in Scotland, whether that's performing at one in Australia or in New York, but just because of that the commonality of a good time, friendship, everyone's welcome, a really positive vibe. I mean, I love Christmas, but I have to say, I love a Burns supper is one of the best nights out you can get. And although I see differences in many of them in terms of kind of adhering to a format, for me, the most important thing is that people have fun and don't feel, a terrible pressure to conform, to a strict routine. Other people would say, nope, it's got to be, you got to have this part and this part and this part, and then it'll be that part. But for me, it's like, no, I mean, the best way to encourage people to have a good time is to, make it relatively easygoing rather than the strict formality doesn't really do it for me. When saying that, one of my favourite ones was probably that first one in the US, the American Scottish Foundation, the Burns Supper at the University Club. And it's a gorgeous place, feels rather opulent. And for me, coming from Ayr and singing in this room with gold gilded ceilings and all the rest of it was it took me back, to say the least. But coming from Scotland and getting the opportunity to sing at Burns suppers across the world, there's nothing like it. You're received so positively, and people are just so genuinely grateful to have someone from Scotland that's coming to sing at their event. I've never, not only with Burns suppers, but with Scottish festivals in general. I mean, I just feel an immense gratitude because people are just so keen to talk to you and have you there. I mean, it's an amazing feeling. I mean, I do feel very lucky to have been born in Scotland for many reasons, but certainly we're received so kindly where we go. But that first Burn Supper in New York, that was probably my favourite so far. But I'm keen to do a lot more travelling in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, we went with that 2000 in fact, that must have been 2020 actually, probably one of the last nights out that we were at. My colleague Emily and I went to the one in New York, and yeah, that building, just walking up to it, and it was snowing, and oh yes, it was quite magical and just beautiful. Yeah, very nice building, but yeah, and yeah, really following tradition as well. It was. Although the haggis, of course, isn't quite to the right recipe, is it? So,
well, this is it. I mean, that's. I really hope eventually that the administration will allow the importing of quality haggis from Scotland, because I mean it's like with a lot of things. Although people produce and sell variations of all kinds of things over here that have Scottish roots in them, I think if you want to get Scottish, if you want to buy Scottish, then buy Scottish.
Yeah. Yes, we'll have to get the haggis in my suitcase. So have you got a Burn Supper to attend this year then, or are you living quietly? Yeah,
I do. I'm going down to Oklahoma next weekend to perform at a Burn Supper in Broken Arrow, just near Tulsa. Oh. It's the organisers that run Scot Fest in Oklahoma have invited me down there, so I'm really looking forward to that. And I've actually got the privilege of doing the Immortal Memory. I think this is my second time doing that, so I mean the significance of it to me, it feels like a really big responsibility. So I'm very positive, but slightly nervous about it, because I want to do a fitting job. And in February, it's the American Scottish Foundation's Burn Supper, the 25th of February. It was moved from January. So I've got two. I'm delighted I've got two. Yes.
Yeah, fantastic.
What about yourself? What about yourself?
Yeah, well, I have to say I was going to, the one I was supposed to go to has been cancelled, just a local one, so it's very frustrating. So I think I'll be eating my haggis at home, but I'm a big fan of haggis, so I'll definitely be going for the whole meal, leeks and tatties, yes. So we do have one later on, like yourself, in February, so we'll maybe make up for it to that instead. But yeah, maybe now that ASF have moved theirs, actually, I was like, oh, could I fit that in maybe when if we had a trip across? But we shall see. So I think Emily, my colleague, is going to the Caledonian Club one in New York.
Brilliant. That'll be great.
So yeah, good fun. But like you say, I think there's often more overseas than there are in this country.
I mean the passion for burns, I mean it really is. It's all over the US, from the bigger cities to the weird villages. I mean it's an amazing thing. Alan Beck from the Burn Society had pointed out to me, we don't have Shakespeare's dinners, throughout the world, but Burns.
No, that's true.
There's dinners, celebrations in honour of Burns take place in every corner of the world, and it's an amazing thing.
Yeah. No, we're lucky to be Scottish, aren't we?
Definitely.
Talking of Scottish celebrations then, you've been at festivals across the world. Some of them we've also been to too. I was quite excited to note we've done Edinburgh Festival, so one's at home, but then Camperdown Festival, Burns Festival in Australia, New York Tartan Week, New Hampshire Highland Games, and the list goes on. Have you got any favourites in there then? Any characters you've met along the way?
Absolutely. I loved going to Camperdown Burns Festival near Melbourne in Australia. I mean, for me, I know that obviously a lot of Scots and Irish and in English went to live in Australia, but even then, still to go to a Burns Festival in the middle of Australia, felt really surreal. And I think just because the community of Camperdown do such a good job to bring the whole community into it, from the young school kids whose artwork adorns every single shop window in this town centre, and they've got performances and all the bars, all the restaurants, cafes, the village hall, and seeing pipe bands. There's something really magical about seeing pipe bands in other countries. They're playing Scottish music. I just think it's the most surreal and brilliant thing. But with the Camperdown Burns Festival, the chair of the festival is a gentleman called John Menzies, and obviously there was the John Menzies shops all through Scotland. And this gentleman, he's the loveliest guy, and I'll always be grateful for him. And it just showed me this great hospitality when I went there, as the whole community did. And I feel when I go to these festivals, I always want to bring back something to Ayrshire, Scotland, or to other Scots. Learning points. Because if I feel like an ambassador in a sense. By going to these places, I can pick up what they're doing, take the learning points back, and share them with other people. And after that Camperdown Burns Festival, there's a festival in Ayr, which is amazing. It's called Tam Fest. It's all about celebrating Robert Burns, using Tam O'Shanter as its kind of focus piece. And they have this festival in Ayr, which very similar to Camperdown. It brings people, it brings the community in, involved and together, and I think that's so key. And there's music performances. There's a Day of the Deed tour walking down Ayr High Street, so it's like this kind of like parade procession, which is amazing. But I felt really delighted that I was able to connect the organisers of Tam Fest with Camperdown Burns Festival together. So you've got Ayr and Camperdown, Australia, now talking, which is great. And there's a festival, in Dunedin, New Zealand, who the Australians brought into the mix. And then the three of them started talking with the Robert Burns World Federation. So then you've got all this kind of increased engagement and interaction with people that are doing really similar things, and they're all passionate about what they're doing. And I think that's so key. That's where, over the last 2 years, it's been a great opportunity to connect with people with similar interests that you might not have met yet, and just start to share ideas and perspectives and how you might be able to help each other. So we'll go with Camperdown Burns Festival. That's amazing.
Yeah, highlight. I'll put that on my bucket list as well then, 1 to 10.
Oh, please.
I've not been to Australia, so that sounds like a fine excuse.
Oh, it certainly is.
So we'll move on from Burns then. Now I was intrigued because sometimes you perform under the name of Little Fire. So I'm a Gemini, so I like this kind of two personalities idea. So what is actually the theme behind it then? What made you do that?
Great question. So my brother, his name is Aidan, and he's 15 years old. And when he was, first born, my parents were wondering what to call him for a name. And so they had all these baby books out, and there was one book that was like, Gaelic interpretations of names and meanings. And I was looking through it, and I was like, loads of cool ideas in here. I had no idea that Aidan, in a rough translation, Gaelic means little fire or fiery one. And I thought that was brilliant. So when they did decide to call him Aidan, I kind of adopted that as my moniker, not necessarily a pseudonym as such, but just like a name for the music. But here's something, I was actually probably, for a good while there when I was younger, almost like embarrassed of using my second name, thinking it sounds too guttural, especially for playing abroad, like McGeechan. Yeah. I mean, there's folk, I meet people here that can't quite say it, and that's fine, that's all right, that's okay. But I'd say now I'm more keen on using my own name that I'm abroad because it's Scottish, rather than using the kind of more generic name. So I don't think I'll be using Little Fire going forward. Now I'm back to being me, and, you know, as Jamie McGeechan. But aye, so the name Little Fire comes from my wee brother, and I've probably embarrassed him enough with it now anyway.
Yeah, if he's 15, he'll not be liking that.
No, exactly. Plus, I feel a wee bit daft standing on a stage at 36 and folk are saying, oh, is that Little Fire? I'm 36, it's time to grow up.
No, I quite liked it. So you've written a book as well, and I love the word glee kit, so it appealed to me already. So what was that? Was that what prompted that transition from songwriting to book writing? And how did you find that? Was it easy? Was it difficult? Or
Aye, I'd say, but before I started singing about 14 years old with the band at school, kind of cliche. But before that, I was writing poetry from primary school. And it wasn't until I was about 14, 15 that I started playing music as well. But I love writing. I love writing. I'm always kind of even contextualizing things in my mind that might never even make it to paper, but I just love words. I love perspectives and nuances in things, and I do struggle sometimes to actually put them into words. You know, the human experience every day, because there's just so much, and where do you start? But I've had some really brilliant kind of mentors along the way. One of my good friends was a gentleman called John Cooper, who I met in my late 20s, and he was a songwriter, and his passion for writing songs and lyrics, I learned so much from him, and he was always full of wisdom about seeing writing as, you know, a kind of a responsibility to describe what it's like to be alive, the human condition, and hopefully that what you write can help somebody, even if it's one person. Brilliant, amazing, if it's inspired one person or helped them to see something in themselves or in the world. So that's always a kind of focus for me rather than commercial success. It's kind of thinking, is this intrinsically of value, you know, and I hope so, but I'm hopefully I'll get better as I do it more and more, get older.
yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Is there more to come?
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think I not being able to get out and perform gave me plenty of time to sit and write, and I just loved that title, Glake It, to be daft or silly. I loved that. And with the book, I mean, it's like there's some poems in there about growing up, about my parents, about my wee brother, about love, loss, all the good stuff. But I've never been one for being, I don't know. I'm never going to be an expert on anything ever. You know, and there'll be loads of things that I'm never even remotely good at. But I think the point is just to do something and see where it takes you. Like with a poem or a story or a song, and if you enjoy it, great. Everyone's got insights into life that they can share. Some of us do it on Facebook and Twitter. Some of us just don't share them. And there's people I know would love to hear more about what they think about the world. But I think it's important just to write it down, put it out there. And if anybody loves it, amazing. And if people don't, it's okay, it's all right. But just express yourself. It'll do you good.
Yeah, I like that philosophy. Did you always think you were going to be a singer then? You know, your 12, 14-year-old self, was that what you pictured, or?
I think it was. There was a point when I was maybe 11 or 12 and I thought I was going to be a journalist. That's something that I was really keen on. But I wrote for the Ayrshire Post for about 6-7 years, so I was involved locally with writing about music and cultural happenings, and now you know, I work as a musician, but I do PR as well, and events online. but music it's the passion. But I think the older I'm getting, the less I'm seeing it as an identity. I think for a lot of younger people that get into bands, they just see themselves in a kind of one-dimensional way, like, yeah, I'm a musician, or yeah, I play in a band. This is who I am. It's like, that's one aspect to what you do. So although I just loved singing, I mean, it feels, I'm not religious, but it feels like a spiritual experience when you lock into a song. When you lock into it, it feels like you're just connected to something greater, and you're connected to everything. So I'll always see myself as someone who sings, but I think the longer I'm here, the more I realise that I'm actually really interested in loads of things. Like, I would love to do some acting, I would love to do some script writing, and filmmaking. There's loads of things I want to do, but singing is just such a simple, straightforward way to feel good and to connect with people. So I'll never stop doing it. But I love it.
The name McGeechan has connections to MacDonald clan, and that's actually a clan of the month. In December, we always have a clan of the month each month, and we celebrate everything they do and what they get up to and all their history. So have you done much research yourself then into your family tree? Have you got any stories? Oh, no, you're not. No.
No.
We're going to have to inspire you.
100%. I mean, my mum did a wee bit of research into her family tree. Her maiden name was Wright, so she did a bit of research through that. But with my dad, I mean, he told me, and it might or may not be true, that we were, associated with a McDonald or McDonald of Clan Ranald or something. I don't know, and it feels so ironic to be here and meet people that are grateful and passionate about having, any kind of Scottish lineage, and it feels very weird to actually have no real insight into my family tree. And I spoke to a lady at a clan village tent at Scotfest in Oklahoma last year, and she was able to tell me a wee bit more about my kind of family history than I had a clue about, which I was so grateful for. I'm more and more keen to trace back. I found there was a John McGeechan that was involved in the Battle of San Juan Hill. I think it was 1898 on Cuba, and there are no other McGeechans in history other than this guy and Sir Ian McGeechan, Scotland rugby coach. So to find one in history books, I'm like, I need to find out more. Who is this person? How did he get to the US? What's the story? But I would love to know more about the name. Some people have suggested it comes from Mac Eachan. I haven't got a clue. I'd love it if you can help me to find out, please.
Oh, well, I'll take that as a bit of a challenge then, yes. We'll have to do some more research into that for you. Yeah. It's intriguing, isn't it? Because I don't think I was that, interested in that kind of thing either. My kind of transition into the whole tartan and Scottish side of things was more through the product, my initial interest. But yeah, I have definitely become very interested and found out some very random little lines of heritage on my own side. So yeah, it's a dangerous road to start down because you can spend hours and hours on it. It's so interesting. And the more you find, the more you want to know.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I feel we're so lucky to have, the National Records of Scotland. Yeah. It's not like the databases, the archives aren't there. It's just a case of starting on the journey. But I would love to. My mum's no longer here. She passed just a couple of months ago. I've got a 15-year-old wee brother. I do feel an increasing sense of responsibility to confer onto him, a wee bit more about where our ancestors came from.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll be in touch. We'll give you a hand with that.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's probably exhausted our line of questions. It's so interesting to talk to you. I'm completely inspired. Maybe we'll meet at one of these burn suppers or festivals and I'll get to hear you in person.
I look forward to it, absolutely. Certainly, if not at the Scotland Shop in Albany, then certainly back in Scotland. I would certainly love to come for a cup of tea and a yap. That'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, well, there'll always be tea on the go in Albany as well. I had to make sure. I said to the builder that, I need my kettle and everything, and he said, kettle.
What's a kettle?
Yeah, what's a kettle? I was like, I need my kettle. I need my cup of tea. So yeah, the kettle will always be on. So you can come and sing for us in Albany.
I'm there, absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to visiting the store in Albany, absolutely. And congratulations on that. That's going to be brilliant. It's going to be brilliant.
Couple of weeks and it should be ready. The builder's busy. But
exciting.
Thank you.
Very cool.
Now your book, before you go, you better tell us we can get your book on Amazon, I presume?
Aye, you can get it from Amazon. It's called Glaykit. And it's on Amazon. You can buy it in hardback or even as a digital download as well. But I'm working on a new one. It's just, I fully encourage anybody out there, write down your daft wee stories, write down your summary of the day, even if it just helps you, or somebody else might find it incredibly funny,
Well, I have a 5-year diary, and so I can look back. I just write literally 2 lines, but I can look back at what happened 5 years ago. And that's my son's favourite thing, as he comes in at night and says, "Right, Mum, what happened last year? What was going on?" And it's quite funny, the things you write, or the things that seemed important at that time, or the little memories it stirs. I quite like it. Maybe one day I'll turn it into a book.
Exactly. This is the bit. There's something I would have loved to have found, a diary from my grandparents or a book of poems, something like that. But I don't have that. And in one way, I feel, we're very lucky that we can document everything digitally now. But I think we should all keep little kind of treasure troves of poetry books, songs, paintings, things we create. And we might not think much of it in the moment, but they certainly will in generations to come.
Yes. Good. Well, thank you very much. Thoroughly enjoyed our chat.
Thank you so much, Anna. A pleasure to talk with you. And I'm grateful to you for having me. Very grateful. I've loved it, and thank you to Macarena as well. Thank you.
Thank you.